Hey, how you doing this evening? It's great to have you here. Yeah, it's Sunday evening, and it is the Sven Erlandson Sunday Evening Shit Show. Great to have you here. This evening, I want to take a bit of time to hold on. It's great to have you here this evening. I want to tell a little story this evening before we get going too far here, and then I'll be taking questions and so forth. Whether you know it or not, about hold on one second. Just trying to adjust everything here. There we go. Hey, great to have you here. Thanks for coming. Whether you know it or not, when I was back in college, I studied Latin, and I also studied ancient Greek and Koine Greek, which is a derivative of the Greek language. And it's about Koine and ancient Greek are about as similar as Irish English and Creole English down in Louisiana. So very different languages. Anyway, I studied those three, what are known as classic languages, and I also studied the classics and Roman and Greek mythology. And so that's a big part of my background. And I want to address one particular story in Greek-Roman mythology, and it's the story of Narcissus. And it's where we get the word narcissist today. It's a word that I have seen thrown around so much more just in the last 5 years. You never saw that word, or rarely saw that word 10, 15, 25 years ago. You hear the psychologists talk about it, but now it's so much a part of sort of common language. And anyway, in sort of anticipating going live this evening, I was going to stop by the garden shop where I get my mulch and I get my hay and I get my flowers and all that shit. And I was going to get a particular flower. It's called a paperwhite. All right. Paperwhite has a very long, slender stalk, green. It's about that tall. And at the top are these very bright white blossoms, a little bit of yellow on the inside. And paperwhite has a very, very strong fragrance. It's just wonderful. It's one of my top 5 or 10 favorite flower fragrances. Anyway, the other name for a paperwhite is a narcissus. Narcissus. And it comes from the same root as where we get the term narcissist. And it goes back to a little story. And as I was telling you just a minute ago, in college and also in graduate school, I studied Latin and Koine Greek and ancient Greek and studied the classics. And this is a story that got adopted by psychology about 100, 150 years ago-ish. And it originally represented something in psychology, I don't fucking know, but it's sort of taken over in pop culture in the last 5 or 7 years. And I want to tell you very briefly the story of Narcissus. Narcissus basically was cursed by the gods. And he was cursed by the gods with this, that if he ever saw his own image, he would fall in love with himself and never be able to break himself out of the trance. Well, he and his, co-workers and buddies were at the construction site one day, and as they were walking back, he saw a pool of water, and he bent over to get a drink of water. And as he went down into that pool, he saw this image, and he fell in love with this image instantly. Fell madly in love with this image, and he would stay there and stare at his image. Whether he knew it was himself or didn't know it was himself, it was that image. And of course, standing back, we realized he fell in love with himself, right? And this went on for quite some time. And there are a couple of different endings, depending on who you're reading, for how the story ends. Some say that Narcissus killed himself because he could never consummate his relationship with himself. He could never basically marry himself. Other images say that he fell into the pool trying to have himself and basically drowned in his own self-love. So as we think about a narcissist, and I know so many of you have said you're in relationships with narcissists, and I believe you. I have no reason not to believe you. I use a different word personally. I use the word taker, but narcissist is fine. It's your life cult, whatever the fuck you want. Anyway, you can see where this notion of the original Narcissus, how it relates to this idea of a narcissist. Someone so self-absorbed, so fully in love with himself. Once they began to really see themselves, they fell in love with themselves. Now, one of the things we know is that narcissists don't happen. It's largely conditioned. They become that. Very often it's the golden child in the family, the person who it's all about. The family revolves around that person. Maybe it's a great athlete or a great violin player in the family, or the person that the grandparents just love the most, and the grandparents just dote on him, and the grandparents happen to just live up the block, and that particular male or female becomes this sort of self-absorbed person. And in my last book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup, I talk about the curse of having a golden child as a sibling, and then there's also the curse of being the golden child. Back to the story of Narcissus. So Narcissus dies because of his, he's overly self-absorbed, and it ends up being his demise. But where the story is most fascinating is actually before Narcissus encounters the pool in which he sees his own visage, his own face, and falls in love with himself. And what happens is he's actually wandering through the mountains, and he encounters a mountain nymph, a fairy, a sprite. We'll just call her, for simple sake, a woman. But a woman possessed with sort of some divine characters. She can fly around and so forth. And this nymph's name was Echo. Now, Echo herself had been cursed prior to ever meeting, and we're about to discover, falling in love with Narcissus. Echo had been cursed for one reason or another, and the curse that the gods gave her was that she lost her own voice. Now, stay with me here, and just think about this in terms of the narcissist in your life, male or female. Echo was given the curse of she lost her own voice, and all she could do was repeat back what was said to her. All she could do was say, you know, if you say, hi, I'm Narcissus, all she could say is, I'm Narcissus. Okay, well, anyway, Echo was in the mountains, and Narcissus happened to be passing through, and they met. And Echo fell instantly in love with Narcissus, okay? And couldn't think of anyone else but Narcissus. She was madly in love with him. All of a sudden, her whole life became Narcissus, wanting him, serving him, wanting anything for him. She was completely other-absorbed, and the other was Narcissus. But unfortunately, Narcissus spurned Echo. He pushed her away. He didn't want Echo. And so what ended up happening is Echo basically began to wither away, till eventually all that was left was her whisper in the sound. It was her echo. So now when Narcissus first met Echo, he said hi, and she said hi. He said, who are you? She said, who are you? He said, I'm Narcissus. She said, I'm Narcissus. You see where this is going. And eventually he spurns her, doesn't want her, and she begins to wither away, and all that's left is her voice in the mountains, the echo. All right? That's the story from which we get that Greek word, echo. And so what we have, yes, we know then that Narcissus goes on to see his own image in the pool of water and falls in love with himself. And that's a whole story in and of itself, a person who is overly self-absorbed. But in that relationship between Echo and Narcissus, we have one person who is overly self-absorbed, and we have one person who is overly other-absorbed. And very often in life, those two types of people find each other. Takers tend to find givers. Givers tend to find takers. And it seems to fit for a while, till the giver realizes, holy shit, I'm not getting anything here. And you can only give for so long. For some people, it's 5 years, 10 years. For some, it's 20, it's 30 years. And you're realizing it as you go, but you're realizing your needs are going unmet, right? And it gets harder and harder on one hand to move out. But you begin to more and more see the truth that I'm completely overly other-obsessed, and this person is overly self-obsessed. And so we get that story of Narcissus and Echo. And so my question to you is, which is it in your life? Are you simply an echo of the narcissist in your life? Are you simply overly other-absorbed? Or are you the narcissist, for whom you look for people who just echo back what you say, echo back anything about you, who are just absorbed in serving you? So which is it in your life? And now that I've sort of put that story out there, I'm open to answering any questions. You've got me here. I am live. It can be on narcissism. It can be on taking and givers. It can be on anything you want. I'm not taking calls this evening simply because it was sort of impromptu. And I thought, fuck it. I'll just go live and take your questions right here. You'll forgive me if I'm constantly peering at the screen. I've got my glasses and I may have to go with them. I just left my girlfriend after 17 years because there was nothing there. Wow, these come fast. Hey, bro, take off all the time you need. There's no limit on this. Oh, thanks. Except I've got a fire in my fire pit, and I'd really like to fire that fire up this evening. But it's hot as shit. I was supposed to do it yesterday when it was 60 degrees. All right, come on, give me something to work with here. I'm in a hostage situation marriage right now. Without knowing more, I really can't help you. I don't know what to tell you on that one. You're 1,000% echo, and I'm sorry to hear that. But that's a great, and when you guys post here, say whatever the hell you want, tell me to go fuck myself, I won't be offended. But if you can put something in terms of a question that you actually want me to answer, that helps me to sort of jump on it and run with it. What happens with echo in the end? Great fucking question. As I was telling the story, some of you I know have jumped in sort of a little late here or whatever. Echo basically fades away. She shrivels up. And because her love is spurned, because there's no love reciprocated for all the love that she's giving, and she fades away into sort of nothingness, and all that is left is sort of the memories of who she was. Now that's the story in the mythology, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I think most of you who know me, who've seen my videos and so forth, my whole goal is trying to get you out of those situations before you shrivel up and choose shriveling up as your fate. And what it requires, and you've seen this in my previous posts, is that there is no motivator like pain. And when the pain gets bad enough, change will not occur until the pain gets bad enough. My clients hear it from me all the time. And so once we become aware of the pain, that this relationship isn't right, it doesn't feel good, I'm giving, and he's taking, or she's taking, and all she does is take, or worse, all she does is take, and I give, but every now and then she gives me a nugget of love, and that gives me hope that it could be more, and it could be more, and all those little nuggets, once a month, once a year, once a week, I don't know, but just these little nuggets that maybe she does love me, or maybe he is interested in me, or whatever. And those little fucking nuggets keep us holding on forever and ever. As I talked about in my last book, there's a hole in my love cup. I talk about a relationship camel. And I also talked about this on my last live event a week ago, that a camel, can go through a desert, go a long distance on a little bit of water, or a little bit of fat stored in the hump, right? Well, a relationship camel is a person who can go a very long distance on just a little bit of love. I'll get everything for you. I'll take care of you. I'm the relationship camel, and I'm just overly other obsessed. And I'm giving to you. Just give me a little bit of love, because I can go a long distance on a little bit of love. Well, that's not a recipe for a happy relationship. A lot of my clients are in work on Wall Street, CEOs, presidents, companies, shit like that. And if you're investing this much and you're getting this much in return, that's called a horseshit investment. And you abort that investment. So back to the question, what happened to Echo in the end? In the story of Echo and Narcissus, what happened? Yes, she faded away. And all that was left was this faint voice of her that was never her own original voice. Remember, her curse from the gods was that she got her original voice taken out of her. And she just became an echo of whatever was being said by someone else to her. So echoes, if you got a narcissist in your life and still in your life and you're allowing it, you're fundamentally playing the role of echo. It's all about them. And I in no way want to come off as blaming the victim. Okay, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is you're playing into it. And my goal is to help you either A, get the fuck out of the relationship, but far more importantly, begin to find your own inner authentic voice. And begin to fucking come alive. In my story that I write with my clients, my friends, the people that I work with, Echo doesn't fade away. Echo gets her own voice back. And it gets layered down under all the crud you've been taught about yourself growing up. all the fears that have been placed inside of you, all the pain, all the bullshit beliefs you've been taught about yourself. It's one thing to get the pain out, and a lot of therapists and clergy will help you do that, but the real shit, and this is why my work is spirituality, it's about going down to those core fucking beliefs and seeing the fucking core beliefs and naming them. And by those core beliefs that have been inside you that you can't even fucking see right now, that's the shit that got pressed into the wet cement of your soul when you were a child. That's the virus that's infecting the whole fucking operating system. And until you get those fucking core beliefs out, they're still running your fucking life and you can't even fucking see it. So the question then, I just saw one come across the screen, well, how do you get out of a relationship with a narcissist? In a way, it's the same way you get out of a relationship with anyone. You get up, stand up, and you go. Yes, there are a million intricacies. Yes, there are a million fucking details. And yes, there are 5 million fears. But in the end, you have to do it. And see, that's the power of pain. Stay with me here. When the pain gets bad enough, we reach what I call, in one of the videos that I did about a month ago, it's called the fuck it point. When the pain gets bad enough, we reach a point where we just say fuck it, where it's been building up for years, maybe even decades, and we reach a point where we've never taken action before because we're so afraid of what people will think. We're so afraid of the outcomes or potential outcomes. We're so afraid of failing. We're so afraid of all these things, especially what people will think. And so we don't do it. But meanwhile, all the pain, and pain comes in many forms: disappointment, financial pain, sadness, frustration, all sorts of forms. But eventually it gets so fucking bad that we reach the fuck it point, where it's just like, and it can be a straw that broke the camel's back, but it's years of this shit, and you reach a point, it's like, fuck it. I don't even care anymore. I don't even care what people are going to think. I don't care if I fail. I don't even fucking care anymore. I got to do it. Well, that's how you get out of the relationship. That's how you get out. You get out by the pain being so fucking bad that you just say, fuck it. I'm fucking doing this. I don't even give a shit anymore. I need to do this for me. I don't care what you fucking call me. I don't care what your family thinks of me. I don't care what my family thinks of me. I don't care if I have to be poor. I don't fucking care. I'm getting the kids. I'm getting out, or if I'm just leaving, or whatever it takes. When that pain gets bad enough, it gives you a strength and it gives you a courage that you've never had before. And you have the ability to stand up and not back down. I get so many people in relationships say to me, I'm teaching them about loving themselves and beginning to hear their own voice rise up from within. And this notion of standing up for yourself and saying no to this other person. I get men and women saying, Sven, I've stood up for myself a million times before, but she always out-talks me. She's a lawyer, let's say, and she always wins the argument, or, he always outshouts me, right? And so I just sort of cower back. And I said, yeah, exactly. That's my point. The goal is to reach the point where you stand up and you don't back down, where you have so much strength, where you have so much fuck it in you that you stand up and you don't back down. As far as specifics, yeah, I recommend, generally no contact or as little contact as possible. But you got to get yourself out of that situation. But it's not just enough to get out. You also then have to begin to go inside and pull the pain out, pull all the fears out, and pull out the bullshit beliefs you've been taught about yourself. And by pulling them out and looking at them and naming them, we defang them. My 93-year-old mother always used to say, Sven, naming the beast is half the problem. Naming what that belief is, naming what those fears are. Many of you I interact with on the comments on my posts, and you ask me a question, I drill down and I ask, well, what's this? Well, but what is it really? If you were to put it in one sentence or less, drilling down to find out what really is it at its essence. And by naming it, it doesn't have power over us anymore. The Buddhists always talk about awareness. Awareness. I'm not a Buddhist, but they got a lot of great shit, as with most religions. And one of the things they talk about is that once we become aware in life, everything changes. And I don't mean aware of what's outside of you, but aware of what's going on inside of you. Yes, the outside stuff too. And the more you become aware of it, you can't unsee it. Once you become aware of the fact that your spouse is a taker or a narcissist, you can't unsee it. And the evidence just accumulates more and more and more and more. And the more you see it, the more you realize how little you're valued. And the pain increases, the dissatisfaction, the unrest inside of you increases. So, next question. Just saw my video. How do you figure out what is ingrained in you, entrained in you? How do you figure out what's ingrained in you? Okay, I know it's gonna sound like a lot of my answers are, well, get my latest book. But I'm saying get my latest book because all this shit is in there. My entire counseling method is in there. The ways to figure out what's ingrained in you, to find out what your core beliefs are, it's all in that fucking book. And a lot of you have been commenting, and you're saying shit like, holy shit, man, this is powerful. This is overwhelming. I had one person say, I've had to take a few days off from your book. It's just so powerful and there's so much to absorb, but it's totally fucking helping me. It's jacking me up. But the way you do it is, it's hard to explain in this sort of setting, but if I were in a counseling setting, what I require of all my clients is that they have to write an autobiography for me before we ever even meet. And then I read that. I don't charge for the reading of it. Sometimes I'm studying it for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. And then I know your story from your perspective, your life story before we ever even fucking sit down. And so I've got a whole bunch of questions, and I've got things I want to pair up. And well, what about this? Well, what about this? And what I'm looking for is incongruencies, things that don't make sense. And so how do you begin to define what your underlying beliefs are? Often I start with a little exercise. Actually, I'm going to take you through it right now. It's very simple. And it's where I ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a question, okay? And it's about your past. And if you want to take notes here, I recommend it. It's a very simple little exercise. But I'm going to ask you the question, then I'm going to give a couple of examples from my life to sort of get your brain going. And then I want you to answer the question for yourself, since we're not, talking. And the question is simply this: what are the messages that you received when you were growing up? What were the messages specifically that you received about yourself or about life? And they can often, sometimes they might have been explicit, but very often they may very well have been implicit. Okay? So there's the question, and I'm going to give you a chance to answer, but I'm going to give a couple of examples from my own life. One of the messages that I got from my parents about life, one of the single most powerful messages, and it was never explicit. My father was a pastor. My mother raised us 6 kids, but she had been trained as a school teacher. She ended her career as a published writer and professor at the graduate level. And she had been a director of education and all this, but their whole lives were spent serving people. And one of the underlying messages that I got was what drove my parents' lives. And again, my mom's 93. My dad died the first month of COVID last year. Not because of COVID, but one of the most powerful messages I got in my life is what drove my parents every day. I mean, we'd have fucking dinner. There were 6 of us kids. We'd have dinner. Dad would have to go back to church because he was teaching classes or running study groups or counseling people. And mom and one of us kids always had fucking dishes, right? Even when I was 5, 6, I was doing dishes for 8 people, right? Probably broke a few dishes that way, but whatever, kids got to learn responsibility. And mom would string the phone cord from the kitchen where the phone was on the wall into the bedroom right next to the kitchen, and she'd be counseling somebody. My parents, every single night, the phone would go off at 3 a.m. because somebody needed to talk to the pastor, or somebody needed to talk to the pastor's wife because they were, there was domestic dispute, or someone's suicidal, or gee, my kid is missing, or whatever. My parents spent their entire lives serving people, and the underlying message I got was that my parents loved people. And so the message I got is people love people, and people are wonderful. People are good. My dad ended his career at the at the Veterans Hospital as a chaplain in Minneapolis, and he very, very, very often would say, Sven, I'll go into a room and you get, some veteran who doesn't want to talk to the chaplain or whatever, and we'll start talking about what's on TV, how you doing, whatever. And he would always say, my goal, Sven, is to find the good in this person and to stay focused on it. So one of the messages I got growing up about life was people are good and the world is good. Another message I got specifically about me from teachers in school, and I loved school and I loved my teachers and so forth, was, Sven, you are different. And I was really fucking different. Anybody who knows me from my past knows I was fucking weird ass different, really. But not all of my teachers, but oftentimes I would get in from administration, Sven, you're very different and you need to be more normal. Well, the underlying message is different is bad, normal is good. Stop being bad, you need to be good. So that was another message, and that was pounded in for many years, okay? Then I'm just giving you random ones. I got far more messages than this, but another message that I got was in my early 20s. And the brother that I was closest to at the time of my 5 brothers, and also my first wife, I was married at a very young age, early 20s, and my father were all in one way or another saying, get a job, 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 I mean, that was it. My existence was to make money to support my wife. and we had a baby on the way, right? I was finishing college. I was starting seminary. I was trying to find myself, but none of that mattered to them. All that mattered was make the money, make the money, make the money. And the underlying message is who the fuck you really are really isn't that fucking important. And every single one of those people loved me. It wasn't an issue of love. It was their message, their prescription for my life was to make money. It didn't matter who I wanted to be or who I really was or finding myself. So the point is, we're all getting messages at different times in our lives, right? So my question to you is, what were some of the messages you got either explicitly or implicitly from your parents? I'm going to give you some examples of messages and from clients over the years. Okay, I've had clients told, clients tell me, Sven, I was the second son. There were only 2 kids, and my parents specifically stated to me, we only had you so your older brother could have a play friend. What's the underlying message? You weren't wanted. You aren't wanted. You and the real you doesn't exist. You exist to serve your brother. You're only here to take care of him. I've had the people get the explicit messages of you're ugly, you're fat, you're stupid, you're slow, you're a loser, you'll never amount to anything. You know, all of those explicit messages. But then there are the people, here's one for you. I'll do this messages exercise with clients, and I'll have a client say, Sven, I had a great childhood. My parents told me all the good stuff and that I was wonderful. And, they told me the world's your oyster and so on and so forth. And I always know that if somebody is in my office, they probably didn't have a great childhood. They may think they did, but my job is to dig down. And so I remember I had a client who, this was maybe 10 years ago. And the client was about 35 years old. Ish, and 30 years old at the time. Let's say he's 40 now, whatever. And when he was growing up, his father had passed away. And so he and his sister were raised by his mother. And just so you know, in all of my stories, I changed genders, I changed locations, I changed dates and times. So nobody's being revealed here, trust me. Anyway, he's raised by his mother. He and his sister were raised by his mother. And his whole life, he had been told the world's your oyster, you can do anything you want. And this particular guy was physically gifted, a gifted athlete, a gifted musician, and a gifted student. All right? And he worked his ass off too, don't get me wrong. Anyway, he comes to his senior year, and he has the opportunity to either go and study poetry at, I think it was Yale, or go and play football at a Division I university in Florida. He's confronted with that choice. And he couldn't pick. He couldn't decide. And he was really struggling with it his senior year of high school. And his mom steps in and says, you're going to play football at the university down in Florida. It's just what it is. You got a full ride scholarship, you're going. What's fascinating about that story to me is multiple things. One, the message is, well, first of all, what I tell my clients is, and the client said, and that was fine, mom made that decision, et cetera, et cetera. I said, well, but the truth is, this was the first major decision in your life, right? Where to go to college. This was your decision, your first biggie, as it is for many people. And I said, isn't it reasonable to assume that if your mother steps in and makes the decision for you on the single biggest decision in your life, the whopper of a decision, is it at 17, isn't it reasonable to say she didn't undergo a transformation of character from when you were 16 to when you were 17? That if she was making a big decision at age 17 in your life, the biggest decision in your life, it's reasonable to assume that that she was making small and medium decisions for you when you were 14, when you were 12, when you were 8, when you were 2. And he says, well, yeah, I guess that's reasonable. I said, yeah, people don't change their character overnight. I mean, short of some, earth-shattering event like a death or something along those lines. I said, so isn't it reasonable to assume then that even though your mother said the world is your oyster, you can do whatever you want, that she had basically been either making or strongly influencing your decisions at every point along the way? He said, yeah, that makes sense. I said, so which did you want to do? He says, I think I wanted to go to Harvard and study poetry. Because it's Harvard? No, because I loved poetry. I mean, yeah, sure, it's Harvard too. But he wanted to go that. But he listened to his mother. did what he said. And by the time he darkens my door, when he's 35, 30, whatever the hell he was, by the time he darkens my door, he's still living at the crossroads of life, just like when he was 17. He had one foot, when he was 17, he had one foot going down the Harvard path to study poetry and one foot going down the play football in Florida, Division I football in Florida. And he was still forever at the crossroads, except now it had become this career versus that career. Very, very different careers. And should I get married? Should I stay single? And he was forever at the crossroads and he could never decide. And that was part of the reason he came to me. He says, Sven, I feel like I'm so indecisive in my life. I said, of course you are. He says, what do you mean? I said, because your entire life, you've been taught the underlying message of your life is that who you really are, your voice, your authentic, original voice doesn't matter. If your mother overrode your voice when you were 17 and made the biggest decision of your life, it is very reasonable to assume she made it for you. She didn't sit you down and help you sort it out for yourself and trust you and let you make your own decision. You said she made the fucking decision for you. So it's reasonable to assume she had been making small and medium decisions up to that. And the underlying message it sends to the child is that who you really are, your authentic voice, doesn't matter. There's no more powerful message a child can get than either I matter or I don't matter. It even supersedes I am loved, I am unloved. I talk about that in the book, The Three Binary Gates. So what I'm getting back, bring it all the way back to the original question with you. Bring it all the way back to what I was asking you about messaging. What were the messages you received growing up? And what I'm getting at, and from that story of this guy who could be a D1 football player in Miami or study poetry at Harvard, what I'm getting at is very often the messages that we receive on the surface, the explicit messages, oh, you can do whatever you want, oh, this or that, are undermined or counteracted by underlying messages. And so part of the exercise, and if you and I were here in person and I were counseling you in person, is I would be digging down with my questions. And very often the question is why? But there are other questions as well, digging down. But is that the real message? I had a client about, I don't know, a few years back. And this is not uncommon. This is actually a somewhat common phenomenon. I had a client and I went through this messaging exercise with him. And he said, yeah, I was told I could do whatever I want. It just had to be doctor, lawyer, or business. But as long as I was either a doctor or a lawyer or like entrepreneur or in business, finance, something like that, they were fine. They'd stay off my back. I said, so in other words, go do whatever you want, but as long as it fits within our parameters. And see, this is one I see very often in parents. Parents saying, oh, you can do whatever you want, go do whatever you want. But then when the rubber hits the road, they offer their approval, they offer their disapproval. They ask certain questions that undermine the path that you really want to go. And it's so easy, I hate to say this, it's so easy to manipulate children. It really is. It's so easy to put things in their heads that they think are their own. It's so easy to ask a question that causes them to doubt themselves. And when they start doubting themselves, then what are they going to do? Take the safe path. And isn't that great? Because then I, as a parent, don't have the stress of my child taking a riskier path. And so the question to you is, what were the messages that you were taught about yourself and about life growing up? And if you were reading my book or doing the DIY badass videos that are basically the book in video form on my website, I would be asking you more questions and digging down to what those messages are and, most importantly then, how they are influencing your life today. Our lives are driven by those messages we receive as children, like a virus infecting an operating system, as I was mentioning earlier. And so beginning to discern what those messages are, and it's always best to put it, as my clients hear me say this a million times, in one sentence or less. In one sentence or less. Boil it down. Well, I don't know, Sven. I don't know. And I say, guess. Whenever I hear a client say, I don't know, it's gold. I know there is gold on the other side of those three words. I don't know. And I push them. They say, well, I don't know, Sven. I said, well, use that big fucking brain of yours, man. Speculate. Knowing you could change your mind tomorrow or change your mind a month from now, just off the top of your head, what might be the answer? What might be one of the messages you received? Well, Sven, I remember my mom was always like hovering and always telling me not to, always wear a coat, always stay close to her, always, be careful when you're driving, don't go too far. She wouldn't let me stay over at friends' houses. That I learned, I guess what I realized, Sven, is I learned that the world is a scary place. My mom just lived in this constant fear, or my dad just lived in this constant fear. And that got transferred to me, and I've lived my whole life in this cloud of their fucking fears. It's like, and then the epiphanies start to happen. And then we get into, well, how is that affecting your judgment today? And we began to realize, and I have their whole life story in their autobiography that they've written for me, and I began to cite examples then. Weren't all of these decisions driven by fear? And we began to realize how much of the client's life is actually driven by fear. And I got news for you, folks. Fear and happiness are inversely correlated. The more fear you have, the less happiness you're going to have. The more happiness you have, the less fear you have to have. Fear and happiness cannot coexist. Okay? There's always going to be a measure of fear in life. I'm not disputing that. But if you are making any decision you're making based on fear cannot lead, ultimately, unless the fear is worked through, cannot lead to happiness. Fear and happiness cannot coexist. Fear and peace in the soul, especially, cannot coexist. You know, it's fascinating. I mentioned Buddhism earlier. I'm not a Buddhist. I mentioned Christianity and Judaism and Hinduism. I'm none of those. I'm just sort of my own spiritual entity. But one of the things that is quite interesting, I used to be a pastor, a Lutheran pastor. You know, undergraduate degree is in religious studies and mathematics. My master's degree is in divinity. I was served a couple of churches. I've published many articles and books in the field of theology, spirituality, etc. Anyway, one of the things that's so interesting on this notion of the correlation between fear and happiness, one of the most interesting things is that in the Christian Bible, in the Jewish Christian Bible, one of the single most common phrases is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, fear not. So my question to you, the next question I have for you this evening is simply this: how much does fear drive your life? I mean, if you were to be really fucking honest, how much of your decisions are driven by fear? And most importantly, I want to ask you this one, because this is a pet question of mine. One of my pet questions is, I believe the single greatest fear that has the power to undermine happiness and peace more than anything else is the fear of showing the world who I really am. Taking my authentic voice, the voice of my own soul, and putting it out there. And why are we afraid of that? Because you know that when you put it out there, you know exactly what your brother will say. You know exactly what your mother or your father will say. You know exactly what society will say, or your husband or wife will say. You know exactly. And it's been so painful. The reason you've kept the real you in your whole fucking life is because when you were a kid and you expressed your real self, your own creativity, what you really wanted, your dreams, your passions, it was criticized. It was put down, maybe even ridiculed, mocked, laughed at. And so it wasn't safe for the real you to exist on the outside. So you put that fucker in a cigar box, wrapped that fucker up in duct tape, and stuck it way down deep inside underneath the fucking bed next to the Christmas sweaters, deep inside. And you spent the rest of your life just being whoever the fuck you got to be to either A, win approval, or B, avoid criticism. Scariest thing in life is to let the real me out, because we fear all the shit that drove the real me in the first place. But that's where happiness is. That's the only way happiness and peace can truly come, is when you have the courage to finally push back the voices that might assault your authentic self, to push back, to begin to reduce the impact in your life of those people who have been running your life and keeping you living scared your whole life, and then to begin to draw out the real you. I had no problem expressing my life with all the pain because it can help others. And I'm sorry I can't read the names on all these because the font is lighter. Yeah, for those of you that have the courage to express your real self, I mean, that's where life begins. And I always talk about with my clients and in my books and so forth, it's having the courage to be, say, do, and become on the outside who I really am on the inside. Be, say, do, and become. The courage to be, say, do, and become. And three things happen the more you have the courage to be, say, do, and become who you really are. One, and this is what makes it scary, is you start to lose people. The more I have the courage to become my authentic self, I start to lose people. People who are married to the idea of who I used to be. People who want me to just keep being who I've always been. It can be a parent, friend, lover, spouse, children, whatever. And the fear in beginning to be, say, do, and become on the outside who I really am on the inside, the fear is of losing people. but you're going to lose people. It's just fact. You're going to. Some of whom you maybe thought were going to be with you forever. Best friend, lover, sibling, whoever it might be. And that's the first step, that fear of losing people. But once we face that fear and become okay with it and begin to express more and more who we really are, a sort of momentum builds up and we start to really fucking like becoming who we really are. And then there's a second thing that happens. One, the more you become your real self, the more we begin to lose people. Two, the more you become your most authentic self, the more you be, say, do, and become on the outside who you really are on the inside, the more you begin to effortlessly attract people. You begin to effortlessly attract people who love who you're becoming, who say, fuck, I love who you're becoming. This is fucking fantastic. Or who say, if you went back to being who you used to be, I wouldn't be the least bit interested. I love this person you're becoming. Or people who say, I love that you don't even know yet who you're becoming. I just love that you have the courage to become. You begin to effortlessly attract people who love who you're becoming. Be, say, do, and become on the outside, you begin to effortlessly attract people. And that's the thing, is we've all met people who burn clean energy, who just have a clean spirit. You know, they're living this authentic life. And it doesn't necessarily mean they have a huge amount of energy or a small amount of it. It's not about the amount. It's about how it feels. And those people that are authentic in life, and I don't mean they're just rough all the time or they're just coarse or they're just, fucking brutally honest. That's not the type of thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody who's just, they have a sense of calm. They have a sense of happiness. It's like they are connected to their true self. And we naturally gravitate to people like that. We naturally gravitate to people who are living an authentic life. So the first thing is, the more we have the courage to be, say, do, and become who we really are, first thing is we start to lose people. Second thing is we start to effortlessly attract people. And the third thing is, and this is going to sound like hokum, fucking bullshit, fucking new agey, kumbaya, namaste bullshit, but I swear to God, I see it every day of every week in working with clients. And it's simply this. Shit starts to fall out of the sky. And I don't mean shit, I mean good shit. I tell this story a lot because it just so sums it up perfectly, but I had a client who had been seeing me for about 3-4 sessions, and we were dealing with a little bit in her career field, but mostly personal stuff inside of her, family stuff, a little bit of relationship stuff. She leaves after that third or fourth session, and this is my office in Manhattan, and I'm on the 6th floor, and she took the elevator down, and I get a call right away from her in the lobby. She says, Sven, you won't believe what just fucking happened. I said, tell me, what happened? She says, I was on the elevator and I got a fucking phone call. I said, I don't believe it. I never get fucking service on that elevator. She said, shut the fuck up. She said, I got a fucking phone call. This guy reached out and contacted me. He runs a company in Brooklyn and he wants to bring my company in. I've never even heard of this guy. He wants to bring my company in. This would be a massive client for me. I'd never heard of him. Wasn't even a blip on my radar, but he found me and thinks it'll be a perfect fucking fit for his company. Shit starts to fall out of the sky. I'm telling you, the more you have the courage to be, say, do, and become who you really are, and that requires getting all the pain out from all those memories in your past that are charged with negative emotions. You have to decharge those memories. I talk about that in the book as well. And getting all your fears out and naming, identifying all those bullshit beliefs you've been taught about yourself. But the more you do that, the more your authentic self begins to just bubble up. You don't have to go find yourself. You don't have to discover yourself. The real you isn't out there anywhere. It's not anywhere out there. It's inside of you, and it's always been there. You maybe can't see it, and you're like, I don't even know who I really am. That's because it's packed down there so tightly. But this is why we do the inner work of pulling all the crud out. The more you pull that crud out, especially the bullshit beliefs you've been taught about yourself that got pressed into the wet cement of your soul when you were a kid, that are now hardened and calcified, the more you get all of that out, the real you effortlessly rises up. And the more it does, the more amazing shit just starts to fall out of the fucking sky. Let me tell you a little fucking story. Somebody just said best book ever. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. My title, what's the title of my book? It's There's a Hole in My Love Cup. And you can go to my website, badasscounseling.com. And all of my books are on one page. It's my latest book. And again, it's called There's a Hole in My Love Cup. And it's all of my counseling method collapsed into one book. I think it's pretty easy to read, but it's heavy and it's hard and it's overwhelming. It's not the concepts. I try to make the concepts as simple as possible, but the work is overwhelming. But it's a life changer. And people are saying shit like this. I mean, there are so many fucking people who have been saying this, and I'm humbled. I really am. And I wrote it because I believe in my method and I lived my method. This isn't just shit on clients. This isn't shit out of a fucking book. All right? This is years as a pastor, years in my own life. Can I tell you something? For 10-ish years, I thought about suicide, if not every day, at least multiple times a week. I was preparing to be a pastor, and then I was a pastor, and I was getting my ass handed to me by the church. They didn't like my personality, they didn't like my theology, they didn't like my stand on gay rights back when the Lutheran Church used to be anti-gay, at least anti-gay in the pulpit. And I was standing up for gay rights and so forth. And, my first wife I was getting my ass handed to me by her, and just everything was fucking falling apart in my life over a long period of time. And remember what I told you when we were doing the messaging exercises earlier? I'd grown up very much being taught by school, by society, that I was so different. And I was. I mean, still am, but really weird. And always being taught I need to be normal. Don't be weird. Don't be different. Be normal. So all of this was playing along. And this is in my late 20s, early 30s. And I had thoughts of suicide for years, over a decade. And then 25 years ago, I actually slipped my wrist. Here, I'll show you. You can still see the marks. Can you see it there? There's this one. It's about 9 inches long. This one's about 8 inches. Bad lighting, sorry. Wait, I got a light right here. I don't know if that helps, but it's right there, 8, 9 inches long, plus a couple other ones. So this isn't made up bullshit. When I sit in front of a client and they tell me that they've been in a deep depression, when they tell me that they feel like life is sitting its fat fucking ass right on their head and they can't fucking breathe, when people tell me of the pain that they fucking feel in their heart and their soul, I can honestly tell them, listen, your pain might be with regard to kids, or your pain might be with regard to, your brother died or whatever. So the source of the pain might be different from mine, but I have been where you are. I know what it's like to want to quit. I know what it's like to actually quit life, to commit suicide. I've been there. I've done it. All right? This isn't made up bullshit. My shit isn't shit out of a book. So everything in that book is solutions, tried and tested and true, that it worked on myself. I had to heal myself. I didn't have any therapists. I had one or two along the way that were okay, whatever. I had to figure out ways to do it myself. And I journaled all through college, all through graduate school. My mother had started me journaling when I was 13. And, journaling, thank you. Journaling, my whole fucking life. And I had to journal my own way through my own therapy. And I was reading every single self-help book, hundreds and hundreds of self-help books on spirituality, books, as I told you very early when I was telling you the story of Echo and Narcissus, books on mythology and the classics, reading all sorts of stuff. And I had to figure out solutions for myself. And I found things that worked for me and things that didn't work for me. And so my book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup, is all of those things. My entire counseling practice collapsed into that book. And so when I'm sitting with clients, the shit that I sell, the shit that I'm pushing, the shit that I'm encouraging, and the questions that I'm asking, and I'm coming from this angle, then this angle, then this angle, and under here, this is from experience. And this is shit that I not only made work on myself and friends and colleagues over the years, but over 25 years, almost 30 years, counseling people. Shit works. And so what I'm telling you is, I get so many people, Sven, ask me, and I did, maybe you saw my TikTok from, a couple of weeks ago. People ask me, but does it really work, Sven? This inner work that you talk about, does it really work? And my response is simply this. I mean, you can listen to me and I'm going to say, oh, fuck yeah. But go through the fucking comments on these videos. Go through your comments, people. If you doubt whether or not inner work works, go through the comments on any of these videos. I just put one up yesterday. Jeez, it hit, I put it up last night at like 7:30, and I think right now, not even 24 hours later, it's at like 400,000 views. But go through the comments. Sure, I try to put good content out there that really gets you challenged and thinking and working hard, all right? That's my fucking goal, is to work you over mentally. It's like you're coming into my gym, like back when I was an NCAA strength coach. My job is to work you out. My job is to kick your ass, because tear your muscles down so that in the period of rest afterwards, they grow back stronger. That's what my work is in these fucking vids, in this live session, in my books and so forth, is to kick your fucking ass, all right? Anyway, so yeah, I try to put out good content, but the really interesting shit is in the comments section. And I'm constantly in those comment sections. I'm trying to give a good word here or there, or ask a question that might help someone, something like that. But go through, if you wonder whether or not doing inner work works, if you wonder whether or not spirituality fucking works, if you wonder, go through those fucking comments. Read what people say. For instance, I did a TikTok on, a couple weeks ago on the benefits. Are there benefits to being cheated on? And one of the things I talk about is I get so many clients over the years, and friends too, who have had it happen. And it also happened in my life, where you're cheated on, and 4 years, 6 years, 10 years down the road, you realize what a fucking blessing it was. That in a way, it was the greatest fucking thing that ever happened to you. Why? Not just because you're out of what you now realize in retrospect was an absolute horseshit relationship, but because it forces us, into the pain. And very often that pain then, if we do the work, produces great fruit. And it forces us, it jars us out of a situation, not just the marriage, but a belief system and a way of thinking about life that doesn't serve us anymore. And so very often the things that seem like curses end up being blessings. And when I did that fucking post, you go through those fucking comments on that post. Go through the comments on the post I put up last night. So many people saying, oh my God, Sven, you're right. That after I got out of that, relationship with a taker, or after I got rid of that narcissist, and, it was hard, and I was sad, and I was afraid of being alone, and I didn't know how I was going to make it. But I fucking worked through it, and my life is so much better now. I'm still somewhat nervous about going into relationships, or some people saying, God, my relationships are so much better now. Or I used to fear being alone. I used to fear being lonely. Now I love being alone. I almost don't want to let someone in, which is its own fear. You get, so comfortable being alone when you used to be afraid of being alone. So regarding this question of, does this inner work really work? Does working on pulling out your core beliefs, defanging the demons, the beasts inside, does it really work? Does it really lead to, and I say, fuck yeah, it leads to a better life. Greater strength, greater wisdom, greater insights, infinitely better relationships. Why? Because you're not just always giving. That you're refilling your own love cup. We're all going through life with just a fucking love cup. And in one of my live things, I'll explain the whole notion of a love cup. But we're not just always pouring love out of our love cup. We're also feeding our love cup. So often with my clients, I have to really challenge them on things like the basics. How much sleep are you getting? How's your diet? Are you getting exercise? Are you taking time for yourself? Well, you like time in nature. Are you taking your nature time? Or are you getting your workouts? Or whatever it might be, those things that are you loving on you. All right? This is going to sound so fucked up. I love arranging flowers. In fact, I've worked in flower shops before. And the reason I do is because my parents grew up on giant farms during World War II and the Depression. And so when I was growing up, 6 of us kids, they grew, because Dad was just a pastor, we didn't have a lot of money. We had huge gardens. Anybody who lived on my block knew. In fact, my best friend who lived through the backyard, my 2 best friends, they'd always walk through our backyard when they were coming from like church or coming from school, because they'd always stop in my mom's raspberry bushes and steal her fucking raspberries or her strawberries, right? My parents had huge gardens. And so, we were always employed to help them, do garden work. I mean, huge flower gardens, vegetable gardens, fruit gardens, everything. And so I grew up learning how to garden. The thing is, I never liked gardening. I hate bending over. I'm 6'4". I hate the fucking stooping and pulling weeds. It's such a tedious fucking thing. So my agreement with my mom was, if you ever have any heavy lifting to do, I'll do the fucking heavy lifting. But I learned how to garden. The thing is, I do gardens now, and I do it because my girlfriend loves flowers, and I like seeing her happy. It makes me happy. I know it's dopey, but for me, the fun part is, I also learned, I took a 4-H FFA class in high school, and my mom's best friend for most years, she was the flower lady, the plant lady for WCCO radio and WCCO TV in the Twin Cities. Her name was Lorraine Bergstrand, and she taught me how to arrange flowers. And then I took this course in high school, and then I worked in a flower shop, and I love arranging flowers. Yes, I know what you're thinking, and that's okay. So I can raise them all and I can grow them all, but that's not fun. But what nourishes my soul, back to this idea of nourishing your soul, taking care of your own spirit, filling your own love cup, is doing those things that breathe life into you. We spend so much of our life pouring our life energy out of us into others. But how much time are you spending doing those things that breathe life into you, that fill your own love cup? If you're in one of those, narcissistic relationships or giver-taker relationship, earlier, before some of you arrived, I was talking about Narcissus and Echo, the Greek god and so forth. And how it's so easy to spend our lives trying to win love from someone else, trying to give. Like I talked about in my last book, I was telling you guys earlier, a relationship camel. is someone who just needs a little bit of love to go a long way. I'll give you everything. Just give me a little bit of love. We spend so much of our life energy giving so much fucking energy and attention and love to other people, but we don't give it to ourselves. We keep wanting someone else. We want someone else to fill my love cup. So we do all these things hoping someone else will give me love. But one of the things we realize as we age is that we have to be responsible for our own love cup. True spirituality, communion with your own spirit, developing your own peace, your own happiness, your own harmony with your own soul requires you taking responsibility for your love cup. You making you a priority. You countering the very message that you were taught as a child, that who you really are doesn't matter. Your authentic voice doesn't matter. It's the most powerful message. And again, in my last book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup, I talk about the 3 binary gates. The 3 most powerful messages a child can get. And I'm not going to get into all of it right now, but the most powerful one is either I matter, I don't matter. The real me matters versus the real me doesn't matter. And so what it means to begin to have a sense of spirituality is communion with your own spirit. I'm not talking about God stuff. That's up to you. Figure that out on another day. I'm talking about your communion with your own soul. And the way we do that is first to begin to get out all the crud and the pain and the bullshit beliefs you've been taught about yourself. But then it also means to begin to feed your own soul. I have an exercise in my book that I call Diamonds and Raw Sewage. And I'm not going to explain it right now because we're maybe coming to the end of our time unless I get a good question here. But we have to begin to remove the crud from our lives, but we also have to begin to add into our lives those things that breathe life into us. Yes, there is great joy in pouring love into the lives of others. Great joy, great satisfaction that comes from giving love. But we have to make ourselves a priority, especially if you've been taught your entire life that you aren't a priority. Or you're only a priority if you're meeting mommy's needs, or you're only a priority if you're meeting daddy's needs. For those of you who lived a life where your parents shared all their problems with you, maybe one of your parents used you as what I call an emotional tampon. Actually, I stole that phrase from Sam Kinison, the comedian back in the 80s. But he was saying it in a different context. But where the parent was always bringing their problems to you. And I've seen this with clients many, many times over the years. And that is that the child begins having to carry adult problems at a very young age. And children, a 6-year-old child is, his biggest problem is, well, my pencil broke. Where do I find a new fucking pencil? But every time mommy is with me, she's sharing all her fucking problems with me. And children just want to make their parent happy and take care of their parent. And so the child's role becomes to put their own life and sense of self, pack that away, wrap it up in that cigar box and stick it down deep inside, and to make it about the parent. So the message, the underlying message the child gets is who you really are doesn't matter. You exist to take care of me. You exist to meet my needs. Your childhood, gone. You're basically an adult now, and you exist to take care of me. Okay, you want to fuck up a kid? That's a great way to do it. That is a great way to do it. And if that resonates somewhat with your experience, I recommend you go to my website. I wrote an article on the articles page a couple years ago, I think, and it's called Emotional Incest. Spiritual incest is what it really is, but emotional incest. And the subtitle is along the lines of child as best friend and other parenting mistakes. I see this a lot. So many parents want their child to be their best friend. It's a big fucking mistake. If that is in your vocabulary, listen, it's your life. You're the parent. I'm not. But I would encourage you to rethink that. I would encourage you to go to my website, badasscounseling.com, and read the article on the articles page. It's called Emotional Incest and the effect of turning your child into your best friend. I got news for you. No 6-year-old, no 16-year-old, no 26-year-old even can handle an adult's problems. So how is this child your friend? See, in my friendships with my friends, we talk about each other's problems. We talk about each other's successes. We share each other's secrets. We give each other encouragement. Your child is not equipped to handle your problems. Your child is not equipped to handle your adult secrets. It's not your child's job to give you encouragement. It's not your child's job to take care of you. See, imagine this is a big bowl or a big bottle full of water. And this is a cup. And this is the parent, and this is the child. The parent exists to pour love into the child's love cup. The child does not exist to pour love into the parent's love cup. If a child gives a parent love, it's optional. Bonus, fucking cherry on top. But it is not the child's job to give love to the parent. I was with someone for a long time who said to me, Sven, I want to have kids so that I'll have someone who will love me forever. And even at that young age, it jarred me even then because I knew how fucking wrong that was. Children don't exist to love you forever. Children don't exist to meet your needs. What she was fundamentally saying is, I just want someone who will love me forever, right? And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm here dating you. Anyway, I didn't get into all that. But what she was saying was, I want someone who will love me forever, so I'm going to have kids. In other words, it's their job to love me forever. No, it's your job to love them. Any love you get in return is not a requirement. It's a bonus. Okay, so back to this notion of the parent dumping all their problems on the child, or the parent making the child their best friend, their mini-me. And I know this is going to hurt some people. I know this is going to offend some people. I know you're going to say, fuck you, Sven. That's fine. I had 5 older brothers. Trust me, whatever you say, I've been told worse. I've been sworn at more than you could in worse ways, all right? My name has been twisted and mangled in every manner with every swear word. Child doesn't exist to be your mini-me. Your child doesn't exist to be your best fucking friend because they lack the capacity. Friends take care of each other. Friends go out of their way for each other. Your child does not exist to take care of you. Your child does not exist to listen to your problems. Your child does not exist to give you encouragement. You exist to give the child encouragement. You exist to take on the child's burdens so that they can fly at full fucking wingspan. But if you're burdening them with your fucking problems, right? Adult fucking problems, even if they're 16 or 26. Now, later in life, if you're doing that, you are fundamentally making it their job to take care of your fucking problems. That's bad parenting. That's just fucking bad parenting. And that's a non-negotiable for me. I'm sure you're a wonderful person. And I made mistakes in my parenting, so I'm not claiming to be some fucking perfect parent. Still do. My kids are in their late 20s. One's going to be 30 this year. All right? So I'm not saying I'm free of mistakes, but the expectation that the child exists to fulfill a parent's needs is absolute garbage. And you need to grow the fuck up. And by grow the fuck up, I don't mean put on your big girl panties. I mean you need to go into your pain. Pull out all your own pain. Pull out all your own fears and all the bullshit beliefs you were taught about yourself, because that's what's causing you to inappropriately, basically spiritually rape your child. Having your child meet your emotional needs. Having your child meet your needs for friendship. You need to get that shit out of you so that the real you can come up, so that you're not dependent upon a child to meet your needs. And I get people who are still living in that pattern. I have clients who are still living in that pattern at 50 years old, and their parent is, 75. Now, the truth is, my mom's 93. She doesn't exist to give us love anymore. Once my parents moved into, our 70s, it's just like, it's our job to take care of them, and it's our honor to take care of them because they were never a burden to us. They just gave everything, they worked their ass off. We always had food, clothing, shelter. We weren't their everything. My parents existed to serve the world, but every single day of my life, I was told I was loved, I was hugged, I was given a kiss by my father, by my mother. Every single day of my life. I was spanked when I was, did bad things. Most people would say I should have been spanked more. But once the basics were taken care of, they had work to do, and their work was to go out and take care of other people who didn't have a roof, food, clothes, didn't have someone telling them they love them. My parents were spiritual leaders, and that was their life's work, and they took it very fucking seriously. But my love cup was always filled by my parents. My job wasn't to fill their love cup, and they never put that responsibility on me. They were never I was never expected to be their friend. All right? And I wasn't their whole world. Us kids, family wasn't everything in my home. You know what was everything? That we take care of each other. Everybody's fed and clothed, and we work hard and we laugh together. And, we had fights just like any fucking family. You put, 6 brothers together, they're going to have a lot of fucking fights. There was one sister, but she was basically a guy, so I call her my brother. But there's work to do. And family isn't everything. Serving the world is everything. And it was never rammed on our throat. That was just how they fucking lived. So back to my fucking point. This notion of parent as friend, child as my friend, is I'm strongly encouraging you to rethink that. Your child doesn't exist to be your friend. Furthermore, your child is incapable of being your friend. One day, perhaps your child will take care of you. But you know what happens when those parents try to put all their problems on the child or make their child fulfill expectations for them? Do you want to know what the child does over time as they move into adulthood, especially like 30s? they begin to separate themselves from the parent. Why? Because you've been a burden their whole goddamn life. You've been putting your problems on them. You've been expecting them to fulfill a role for you rather than vice versa. So now they want to get away from it. They want to get the fuck away from you. Boy, if you leaned on your kids in those ways before, and if so much of your identity and your needs were wrapped up in your children, imagine what it's going to be like when they're 30 and let's say you're 60, 65, and all of a sudden they're gone. And they have every right to be. You're not their fucking responsibility. Yeah, parent is, in their 70s, 80s, 90s. I want to take care of them because they always, were good to me. But shit, if you're using your kid as your best friend or as your fucking emotional tampon, you're fucking over your kid. Plain and simple. End of story. All right, so on to something new. Just so you know, if you guys, when you put up something, if you want me to address it, if you can put it as a question, that sort of gets my mind going. That's how I do my journaling too. I always put a question at the top. What about parental alienation? What do you recommend to deal with this if you are alienated? Now, I don't know if you're saying if the parent is alienated from the child, like the child pushed the parent away, or the parent pushed the child away. But I'm going to run with that the child pushed the parent away. What do you do with that? I experienced some of that in my life, and I had to let go. I was being forced out of my children's lives for many, many years by their mother. And I finally just ran out of energy. And I walked away. And she made sure I was pushed away. And she very much obstructed my children from being with me and vice versa and so forth. And to the point of breaking the law many times. And anyway, but at some point I walked away. And I've since had conversations with my kids about that and atoned for that. And, not even atoned, just apologized and really owned the pain that I caused by staying. I didn't have any gas left in the tank, And so I lost my kids for a good part of their teen years. It was fucking painful. You want to know pain? That's fucking pain. Walking away from your own kids, that's pain. Do you want to know how unintimidated I am by things in life? Because I walked away from my own kids. Once you lose your own kids, man, either having them stripped from you, I got them stripped from me, and then I walked away because I had no energy left. Or whether they're stripped from you or you walk away, once you lose your own kids, or not much in life is intimidating after that. Anyway, then without getting into too many details, then the person that my daughter was with when she was in her early 20s, and she loved very much, and I'm still friends with to this day, taught my daughter and said, you only get one father. You do what you want, but you only get one father. And this particular person had almost lost the father and so forth. And so my daughter began to come back into my life. And now, 5-8 years later, whatever it is, we actually have a really good relationship, and it keeps getting better. And I do what I can to serve her and help her meet her needs and, the person that she's with and so forth, and with my son as well. And so what I tell people in the case of parental alienation, where the child has walked away from the parent, is the best thing you can do, as in all situations where there's struggle or there's trauma inside you or sadness or whatever, is just work on getting your own feelings out. Work on your own stuff. Don't try to win the person back. If they're away for a reason. Okay? Honor that. They've walked away from you for a reason. All right? And if they were toxic if they were toxic towards you before they left, hey, fucking thank the gods for that, man. You got that shit out of your life. But keep working on you, getting your pain out, getting your fears out, getting out the bullshit beliefs that you were taught about yourself. And the more you do that, the happier and more at peace you'll become, and the less you'll be intimidated and beaten down by the fact that you're not with your child. And in that process of getting all this stuff out, you'll grow more and more at peace with and okay with being away from your child. I'm not saying you'll ever be fully okay with it. I'm not saying that. But it becomes less painful. And what you'll discover, and here's an insight for you. Here's a trick. Here's something that I knew. When my children's mother and I divorced, my son was 5, my daughter was 1. When we separated, 6 and 2 when we divorced. And her father was a big shot lawyer. Had tried cases before the Supreme Court, and they kicked my ass in court. I didn't have a lot of money. I was, going through seminary, and I didn't even have a lawyer, and I thought we were going to work it out together, and then they did the old switcheroo on me, fucked me over, etc., etc. Where was I going with that story? Fuck, Fuck me. I lost the story. Sorry, it was a great one. It was just the best story ever. Spent too much time on the setup, lost the story. All right, if it comes back to me, I'll finish up. How do you set healthy boundaries with a parent that brings all their problems to you? You stop. You stop. How do you set healthy boundaries? I love that question, okay? How do you set healthy boundaries? Just the nature of the way you phrased it, and I respect the question. I do, and I love that question. Thank you for asking it. How do you set healthy boundaries with a parent who comes to you with their problems? Almost implies that I have an obligation to be kind to them and do it in a kind way or a gentle way. You don't. If you have a parent coming to you with their fucking problems, they've likely been doing it a long time. It's likely not some new fucking thing that started, right? Unless their spouse died or some major life trauma happened. They've likely been doing this a long time, which means they've been stealing your life from you, which means they've been conveying the underlying message, who you really are doesn't matter. You exist to meet my fucking needs. And I'm sorry, that is an inversion, as I was talking about earlier, that is an inversion of the parent-child relationship. Parent exists to meet the child's needs. Pour love in the child's love cup, not vice versa. Child does not exist for the parent's needs. How do you set healthy boundaries? You stop. Stop answering the phone. Stop answering the text, which means you've got to endure the price of being disliked, maybe even besmirched in your family, spoken ill of. But what you've been told your whole life is that you don't matter. And until you start mattering to you and make that bullshit stop, until you make it stop, or at least greatly reduce it, you are still conveying the message. You are echoing back to the universe, I don't matter. Right? As long as you keep, and if the parent's gonna get mad. Excuse me, they assume they're gonna maybe try to exercise whatever leverage they have over you to try to get you back into where you've always been. Don't answer their calls. Don't go over there as much. Stop visiting as much. Or if you're across the country, shut off your phone. If you've been talking to them 3 times a day, every day of your life, how about starting with going to 1 time a day? How about starting going to 3 times a week? Yeah, you're going to have to eat shit. And see, this is just it. If you want to become your real self in life, you have to have the courage to eat shit. In the beginning, you have to have the courage. And see, this is what I was talking about earlier. What hamstrings more success, what keeps people stuck in unhappiness or just stuck, is the sheer terror of putting on the outside who I am on the inside. Showing the world who I really am. And they'll beat the fuck out of you in the beginning. But if you're strong and persist in honoring your own boundaries, as well as going after your own passions and reducing those sources of raw sewage in your life, as long as you persist and persist and persist, eventually they'll get sick of trying because they realize they can't change you. But here's the thing. And I want you to really fucking listen on this one, people. I see it in marriages. I see it in corporate settings with the company presidents and shit like that I work with. I see it in the arts, with the artists, musicians that I work with who are in bands and orchestras. I even see it in the athletes, the Olympians and shit like that I work with. But to make it accessible to most of you, I'm just going to put it in the context of a marriage or a relationship. Very often what happens, and I'm not saying all relationships, there are so many wonderful relationships out there. Marriages, boyfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend, boyfriend. So many wonderful relationships out there. There really are. So if you're not in one, yes, there is hope. Okay. But in some relationships, what happens is a power imbalance develops over time. One person has power and the other person has less power. Okay? And what happens, and I'm just going to set it up with the classic setup, and I know it's so fucking cliche, and I want to apologize to all the guys out there that say, you're being characterized the way guys are always characterized, as the ogre, and it ain't always the case. A woman is capable of doing just as much damage to a man's soul as a man is to a woman's soul. But I'm just going to set up, for simplicity's sake, the man has more power over the woman. And I'll say to the woman, my job is to work with you so you get to the point where you can stand up for yourself and you can begin to honor your own needs, have a relationship with your own soul, and begin to be your real self. And she'll say to me, as I mentioned earlier in this live, she'll say to me, oh, Sven, I stand up for myself. I've always been standing up for myself. I said, no. I don't mean the kind where you stand up for yourself and then he asserts his power, or more power. You stand up, you assert your power, he exerts even more power, and then you sit back down. I stand up, but then I sit back down. And, I've had clients who say, oh, my husband can talk circles around me. So when I try to stand up for myself, he always undermines me. He always knows what to say. Or my wife is so smart. She's just smarter than me and I can never get my points out. Or my wife is so much more aggressive than I am, and she always pushes me back down to size. And so anytime in these power imbalances, when someone attempts to stand up for themselves, they are upsetting that power imbalance. And what will always happen is the other person will do one of two things. And either one first, well, no, usually it's this one first, or both. But what they'll do is if you try to rise up, when people work with me, they begin to get stronger. Why? Because I'm taking out all the pain, so they're lighter, and they become stronger and more centered in themselves, more aware of what's really going on. And they begin to stand up for themselves more. And what happens then is the partner senses it. And so what does a partner do when they sense that their partner, their wife, let's say in this case, is getting stronger and standing up for herself more? They do this. They take that fucking boot, they exert it, whatever power is necessary, and they take that boot, they escalate their power to such a level that they get that fucking boot right back on your motherfucking throat. Now, I don't necessarily mean it's abuse, and I don't necessarily mean that literally, I mean that figuratively. I hope it's not literally, but where if you escalate your power, they will escalate even more. If someone has a chance of losing power, that you're going to assert power and begin to take power and change the balance of the relationship, they will exert their power to get you back into your place. That's why in the past, when you would stand up for yourself, your partner would exert their power and you'd sit back down. Stand up and sit back down. You've been doing that your whole fucking relationship, haven't you? You try to stand up for yourself. You try to speak your wants. You try to speak your needs. You stand up for yourself and you get beaten the fuck back down. They put the fucking boot right back on your throat. But here's what happens. The people who work with me in counseling, the people who actually do the work of my book or those video courses that are based on my book, is that what happens, sorry, I got sidetracked. Somebody wanted to do an interactive video. I just can't right now. I'm on a roll. And I want to sew it up here after a bit. That the more you do the work that I do, whether you're counseling with me or working through my book or the video courses that I have on my website as well, is that you, as we're clearing out more of the crowd, you begin to be stronger and stronger. You begin to see your own value. You begin to matter to you for the first time in your motherfucking life. You begin to see that I am good. And any other messages that counter that were not native to me. I'm sorry, no child comes out of the womb thinking they suck. That means sometime between the womb and right now, you were taught a lie about yourself that was never true. All right. So whatever it is, as they begin to work with me more, they begin to believe in themselves more, fall in love with themselves, feel stronger. Okay. And their partner sees it. And so the power and the strength and the sense of self of my client is expanding, and the partner senses it. And so they try to put their foot right back on your fucking throat and get you back in your place. Okay. And again, this can be male or female, folks. But if that doesn't work, and we especially see this around the time of breakups, but if exerting power doesn't work, then the partner will do a second thing. And that is, and you've heard me talk about it before, they'll become rainbows and cotton candy and pink bows and fucking all sorts of pretty things and flowers out their butthole. They'll become everything you always wanted them to be, right? I had a client who said, Sven, my ride home from work, my husband and I, they didn't have kids. My husband and I would drive home from work each day, and he was going from this side of LA and I was coming from that side of LA, and we're both heading towards home, and we'd talk the whole drive home. And the whole drive home, it was always about his day. And I was asking questions, and it was always about his day. It was always about his day. It was always fucking about him. Thank you, Flower Child. It was always about him. And once I finally stood up, Sven, oh, thank you very much. Once I finally stood up and started standing up for myself and expanding my power and finding myself as a result of reading your book, Sven, and working with you, Sven, all of a sudden he completely changed. All of a sudden, every fucking drive home, he's asking me about my fucking day. He's saying, oh, how did that go? And what about that meeting? What did your boss say on that? On and on and on. All of a sudden, Sven, he had become this person that I had always wanted him to be. When I used to stand up for myself and say, I need this, I want that. And he'd say, and he'd basically knock me back down because the power imbalance. Now he's being that fucking person. And then this dovetails into, many of you watched the TikTok I did just a couple of days ago on the back and forth, right? How many times do we leave a relationship, right? We've finally built up our power, found our own inner voice, and realize I need to leave because this relationship hasn't changed and it's not going to change. And we leave, and then all of a sudden they become rainbows and cotton candy out their butthole, and pink bows and ribbons and flowers, and they become good listeners, and they start helping out, and they start this and they start that they're no longer the fucking narcissist that they always are, or they're just less of it, right? And so all of a sudden they're being that person I always wanted to be. So then we go back in, right? But here's the thing. We go back in, and then maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 months, maybe it's 6 months down the road, we realize they're slipping back into their old fucking patterns. They're going back to who they always were. They could put on a good show up here in the realm of behaviors and actions. They put on a good show for a while, but eventually they slip back. So then we leave again, right? And I know a whole bunch of you have been in that pattern because you talked about it in the comments on that fucking TikTok. And we leave. Then they change again. No, I promise I'll change. Well, wait, you said that before. No, I'll change. This time it's for real. You know, every promise is made. And they even start listening. They start caring, blah, 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 blah. And so we go back in. And sometimes we have to go out and go back in and go back out and go back in over the course of years. One, because we're terrified of being alone. Can't imagine our lives without this person. We really do love them deep down. We're afraid of the financial situation, afraid of what'll happen with the kids. I mean, there are a million reasons. But we go back in because they've changed. And then we realize they haven't. Then we go out in, until we eventually realize nothing's changed, nothing's going to change. You want to know? And you want to know why nothing's changed? Now, first of all, for all the people that say, well, wait, I did it. Yes, there are always exceptions. Setting those exceptions aside, that 2% of the fucking population, if it's that. Do you want to know why the behaviors never stick? Do you want to know why when people, and it applies to cheating as well. You know, is a cheater going to cheat again? I don't want to go down that road. I've done videos on it, TikToks on it. They're in the archives. Go back and look at them. They're really great. Do you know why those behaviors don't stick? Because unless you change, behaviors are driven by core beliefs. Oh, thank you very much. Behaviors are driven by core beliefs. And unless those core beliefs change, the core beliefs that are driving the behaviors, unless those beliefs change, the behaviors won't stick. That's why I spent a lot of time in a couple of my books talking about how trying to change behaviors long-term never changes behaviors. You cannot change behaviors. The core beliefs driving the behaviors have to change. And if someone's just trying to win you back, they're not even fucking looking at their fucking core beliefs. They're just looking at what I got to do to get back to the situation where I'm here and you're here. I just got to get you back, serving my needs, because it's fucking about me. And we go back in, we come out. We go back in, we come out, till eventually the pain gets so bad that we say, fuck it, I'm sick of this shit. Nothing's going to fucking change. We finally have the courage to leave. So that's the tip. Oh, fuck. That's right. That was the thing I was going to tell you guys earlier. Somebody asked, we were talking about parental alienation. I was going to give you a tip. And it's this. There is a natural thing. There was a poet back in the 80s. He was a Minnesotan, and I'm a Minnesotan. And his name was Robert Bly. He wrote some poetry called Iron John. And he used to do workshops for men, and he would never allow men under the age of 35 into his workshops. You had to be over the age of 35. And the reason for that, he said, was because men don't begin to truly become men. Men don't begin to reflect on themselves. Men don't begin to reflect on their past. Men don't long for the father, long to know who the mother is. They've known the mother, but to long to know who the father is or where they really came from, mother and or father, till their mid-30s. So where am I going with this? There is an innate desire in any child to know where they came from, to know who their parents really were, to know their parents as me now being an adult. Me, the child. And that happens around 35. So when I was getting my ass handed to me by my first wife, when she was standing between my kids and me, and I, just fucking me over in every way fucking possible and so forth. Her father had tried cases before the Supreme Court and was, fucking general counsel, the Securities Exchange Commission, all this shit. I knew I had one thing on my side because of my studies, it's in the classics and theology and Joseph Campbell, obviously, James Hillman. There's a natural evolution in the human spirit to know who we are. The child eventually wants to see the parent as the parent really is, to know who the parent really is. And it usually happens in the 30s. So all this shit was happening when my kids were in their, 5, 8, 10, 12. And I knew I had one thing on my side. And so I'm talking to you, those of you wondering about parental alienation, where your kid doesn't want anything to do with you. You got to work on your own shit first. You got to get all your pain out, get all your fears out, get all your own bullshit beliefs you've been taught about yourself. And doing all that work, your own inner work, which you can use my book for, use my video courses on my website for, calms you, brings a sense of peace in your soul, even though your child doesn't want you, which is very powerful. The more you've invested in your child, the more it's part of your identity. And if that child now doesn't want you, you've got to find your own identity. You've got to get out all your own pain so that you can become your real self. But here's the thing that you have on your side. Here's the thing. The only thing I knew I had on my side when I was getting my ass absolutely handed to me, and I was suicidal and all this shit, I knew that I had time on my side. Yes, I know that's a Rolling Stones song. In fact, a very dear friend of ours was married to Jerry Ragaboy, who wrote that song, made popular by the Stones. Anyway, time. You have to let go of wanting your children right now. You have to let go of believing you can't live without your children. If you can't live without your children, then you got a far fucking greater problem. All right? You have to learn to let that go. You have to do your own work on your fucking self. All right? And you have to keep the number 35 in your head. Now with me, it ended up happening when my daughter was about 21, 22, 20, somewhere in there. So I got lucky, but I was ready to go the distance from when my daughter was 6, when my daughter was 12, 14, I was willing to go the distance to 35 because I knew when 35 came, she would want to know who her father is. That's what you've got on your side. If it's parental alienation, that's what you've got on your side. That the child will come around. And I mean, unless you did some really grievous shit, which you don't want to fucking own, unless you're unwilling to own your shit, in which case it could go much longer and your child may never want to be with you. If you don't want to own the shit you did, the pain that you caused. But if you are willing to own that, and maybe you've put it in front of the child and it's still been rejected. Okay, you've put it out there though. That's all right. Just put it out there. But if all of your actions are intended with an attempt to manipulate the child back to you, the child will fucking sniff that shit out in a second. All right? You've got to take it off your fucking agenda for your child's life. Very often that's the hardest part about letting go of a child. You know, or whether it's a child walking away from you or the child going off to college or start their own life, is that you've invested so much of your life, every ballet practice, every soccer practice, every meal you've cooked, every tear you've wiped away, it's a piece of you that's now been invested into that child. Thank you. It's been invested into that child. And so the more we invest into something, the more it becomes part of our identity, right? And so if that thing then turns and walks away, well, then who the fuck are you if you don't have your identity source? Which is why so many parents attempt to hold on and control their children so that I'll never lose that fucking identity. Furthermore, that I'll never lose that love source. Because a child, exists to give me love, to meet my needs, to fill my love cup, So that's the little tip on parental alienation. If you can keep the number 35 in your head, it may happen long before that. But if you're willing to own your shit and apologize, and not just, okay, I apologize, but now we need to move on, but actually own it. Child will see it, and you got to do your own work on your own shit, getting your own pain out. But your child will come around. Far more often than not, because as I talk about in TikTok and as I talk about in my book, children love parents more than parents love children. Child will endure all manner of shit at the hands of a parent that no parent would endure at the hands of a child. Yes, there are exceptions, but generally speaking, parents love children more than children love parents. So that's that. By the way, nice glasses. I have the same ones. Hey, thanks. These are just my little cheaters. How do you counsel so many people and it not drain you of your energy? Commend you for this. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And again, I can't see your names on all these because the font is gray versus white. That's a good question, and I'm going to answer it. And then I think we might call it quits for the night because I've got a fire in my fire pit just waiting to be lit. And it's starting to cool down a little bit. And I'd like to have a cocktail this evening. I'm not going to tell you what's in my Vikings mug. I have a brother, my brother Dan. He has been, he has his MSW. He's been an oncology social worker, hospice, for 30 years. The guy's a stud. Deals with the dying every single day of his life. Deals with their families, helps them, counsels with people as they're taking their last breaths. I have profound respect for Dan's work. With Dan's work and my work, and really any career, it's not just nurses and doctors and social workers and pastors, but any job can do this, but is that it's easy to burn out. When you're taking on other people's problems, it's easy to burn out. In my work in counseling, and I used to be a pastor for many years, I still largely am because I'm a spiritual counselor, spiritual leader, that sort of shit. When you're taking on other people's problems, it's very easy to burn out. When you're taking on criticisms, I'm a public figure. I got books out there and all this shit, and I do speaking gigs and I'm, TikTok and all this shit. There are always going to be critics, and I've dealt with critics my whole life. And part of having 5 older brothers is it thickens your skin a bit, right? And as I was mentioning earlier, once you lose your kids once, you're not intimidated by much more after that, assuming you work through it and get your strength and find the wisdom that it's there to teach you. But what I have to do, this gets back to what I was talking about earlier. How do I keep, if I'm pouring out love into so many people, counseling so many people, I am doing all these fucking TikToks, and you have no idea how much energy it takes to put these fucking TikToks together, but also to go through the comments. Look on my fucking profile. I'm following like 2 fucking people. One guy does all sorts of Chris Farley comedy, and then the other guy, is that the monkey that eats the fucking food that people, something else. And I've had people say to me, oh, Sven, must be nice up on your fucking throne, not being friendly with anybody. I'm like, really? Because I'm going through all the fucking comments trying to help people rather than looking for some person's next dance moves or whatever. I can't dance. I don't give a shit about dancing. I'm a horseshit dancer. My second wife was a Broadway dancer, and she'd always laugh at me. It's like, Sven, you're horrible. And it's like, I know. So rather than going to TikTok and making friends with people, I'm going into the comments trying to fucking help people. So how do I keep from being drained? I keep filling my love cup. You see these woods? I spend time out in the woods. We have woods around our house and on our property. I do fires. I take time alone, a lot of time alone. My workouts, my time bike riding, my time fucking my girlfriend, and hanging out with her. She's the best. My time with my kids, when I see them. And you have to be making your own soul a fucking responsibility. The spiritual disciplines of good rest, good food, time alone, exercise, just blowing the steam out, time with friends, laughter, time, what do you like? In your gardens? What do you like? Whatever it is that breathes life into your soul. So that's step 1. I'm constantly pouring love into my own love cup. And I'm selfish about it. I'm protective of what I need for me. Okay? And I get people coming to me all the time. Sven, can you help me with this? Free counseling. And most of the time I have to say no. It's just not enough hours in a day and not enough energy in my love cup. But I do, do a little bit and so forth. But I'm constantly turning out, which means I have to constantly be filling my love cup. But the other thing is, I'm very deliberate about either not allowing negative energy in or processing out of me. And you've heard me talk about in my videos, there are different methods that I use for getting pain out of me. In one of my videos, I talk about, I was on a podcast. It's on my website, and it was Chris and Cooper. He's not Chris Cooper, but Coop, a really good interviewer and so forth. And he asked me, Sven, talk to me about this or that. Maybe it was Cooper or one other one. But anyway, they were saying, I have a young audience. What do you have to say to the young audience who spends a lot of time online? And my response was this, that basically being online is the same as doing my work as a counselor. Or same as being an artist. My second wife, I told you, was a dancer. And a lot of dancers and singers and stuff, they won't even look at the reviews. They don't want to let the negative energy in. But for young kids who are online and you get into those comment fights with people, or you get people putting you down, you've just ingested negative energy, right? When someone puts you down, when someone criticizes you, or when I'm taking on other people's problems, I'm ingesting all that negative energy. I have to have a way of getting that out. I've been journaling. I told you, my mother started me journaling when I was about 13 years old. That's how I flush out the pain. Another one and this is sort of a higher level step, and I don't always recommend this to everyone because it takes self-discipline, but there's a book out there called the Sedona Method. I think it's out of print, but there are a fuck ton of used copies of it. And it's a method, very simple method that accelerates sort of journaling for getting the pain out of you. There's another one, a book by the author Doreen Banaszak, and I think it's out of print, but and the whole book is on sort of a separate notion, but she teaches a little method in there called the accepting technique. The book is Excuse Me, Your Life Is Now. Based on a previous book by the author who wrote Excuse Me, Your Life Is Waiting, which is actually the better of the 2 books, but Banaszak's method of accepting and the Sedona method of releasing. You have to have means in your life for getting the pain out of you, for getting the hardship out of you, for getting the frustration out of you, for getting the anger out of you. Because if you don't, you're just ingesting it. And you keep building it up, bottling it up, and you think you got it under control and you don't. That's the shit that always fucking destroys lives. That's the shit where people find themselves in my office because they don't know what to do with the negative energy they were never taught as a kid. And I was taught as a kid. I was lucky. And they don't know how to get the pain out. And then furthermore, there's so much in them, they're terrified of getting out. They spend their whole lives running from that tidal wave of all the pain inside of them. They think if they can just stay busy enough and work hard enough, they'll never. But the true answer to life is to stop. Stop. and let the pain wash over you and release the pain and get the pain out of you. Then you begin to come alive. And so that's what I tell these young gamers and these young people who are online, or maybe you're on Facebook, or getting into some political fight, or somebody's putting you down or whatever. You have to have a way of getting that out. Otherwise, we ingest so much pain and fear that for a young kid or even for an adult, all of a sudden, all we can see is the anger and the pain and the fear and the hurt. And we're not flying. We're meant to fly at full wingspan. We're not meant to be wounded and inwardly focused on all of our pain and our fears. But the more criticism and pain you take in, that's the effect. It shrivels you up when you're supposed to be flying at full fucking wingspan. And so kids need to be taught methods for getting their pain out of them, and you need to begin to learn them. And that's what I talk about in my books. I have a few people asking here, and I'm going to wrap it up before I do. I just want to say a couple things. A few people asking about my books. Go to my website, badasscounseling.com. Yes, everything in my life is called Badass Counseling. It's not real fucking original. I'm 100% Swedish American. I'm not real bright. Prone to drooling a lot, all those sorts of things. Badasscounseling.com. My most recent book is the one you want to look for. That's the one that has all my comments, or all my counseling method in it. It's called There's a Hole in My Love Cup, and it's the Badass Counseling Method for healing the soul and unleashing your greatness. And it works. Go through the comments on any of my TikToks, and there are people reading the book saying, holy shit, you really fucking changed my life. To you that just said you bought the book, hey, thumbs up. Keep me abreast of how you're working the book is going. I mean that. And but also on my website, if you prefer videos, I created video courses out of the book. They're not free like the TikToks, but it's all of my book with me and you just talking, okay? And in my book, there are, I've got music that pairs up, different songs that pair up with each chapter, different meditations, and the journaling exercises. But don't do this shit. Don't even bother buying the book if you're not gonna actually open up and really get ready to go after the hard shit in your life. But once you start to get that hard shit out, man, this shit will change your fucking life. Doing the inner work, getting the pain out, getting the fears out, and getting the bullshit beliefs you were taught about yourself. Once you start getting those out, identifying them, and that's what I excel at, is the beliefs. Getting those beliefs out and seeing them, naming the beast is half the problem. Life changes. Everything begins to change. So, those of you who are buying the book, thank you so much. It's great. For those of you that are reading the book and love it, please go to Amazon, leave a 5-star review if you would. The reason for that is because then it moves up in Amazon's ranking and suggestions, and then more people can see it and change their lives. And that's why I spend all this time doing these TikToks and so forth. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I haven't stopped talking for 2.5 fucking hours, man. Just had this little, whatever it is, to sip on. And I think I'm gonna go have another one to sip on. I hope you have a happy evening. I love you, I care about you, and please do the work. Please do the work. For those of you who are in pain, if you're in a hurting relationship, get the fuck out of the relationship. But especially do the work on your own self. Because that's where life begins. That's where your spirit begins to come alive. So again, the name of the book is the name of my website is badasscounseling.com. And the name of the book is There's a Hole in My Love Cup. And I call me an arrogant dick, but it'll change your fucking life. So I love you. Have a kick-ass night. How do I turn this fucking thing off? Mommy, I can't turn it off. Okay. Bye, guys. Love you.